Okay, Bobby, take it away.
Okay. The last week we read about Annika and Tommy and Pippi, and they were up having a tea party in a tree. And then Pippi discovered that it was hollow inside and they could all go down inside. She went and got a ladder, which was very wonderful of her because Tommy and Annika were a little bit fearful of going down this dark tunnel in the middle of the tree. When they got to the base, there was a crack and they could look out and see the ground. So that was last week's adventure. This week, we're going to read about Pippi arranges a picnic. We don't have any school today because we're having scrubbing vacation, said Tommy to Pippi. Scrubbing vacation. Well, I like that, said Pippi. Another injustice. Do I get any scrubbing vacation? Indeed, I don't, though goodness knows I need one. Just look at the kitchen floor. But for that matter, she added, now I come to think of it, I can scrub without any vacation. And that's what I intend to do right now. Scrubbing vacation or no scrubbing vacation. I'd like to see anybody stop me. You two sit on the kitchen table out of the way. Tommy and Annika obediently climbed up on the kitchen table, and Mr. Nelson hopped up after them and went to sleep in Annika's lap. Pippi heated a big kettle of water, and without more ado, she poured it out on the kitchen floor. She took off her big shoes and laid them neatly on the bread plate. She tied 2 scrubbing brushes on her bare feet and skated over the floor, plowing through the water so that it splashed all around her. I certainly should have been a skating princess, she said, and kicked her left foot up so high that the scrubbing brush broke a piece out of the overhead light. Grace and charm I have at least, she continued, and skipped nimbly over a chair standing in her way. Well, now I guess it's clean, she said at last, and took off the brushes. Aren't you going to dry the floor? Asked Annika. Oh, no, it can dry in the sun, answered Pippi. I don't think it will catch cold so long as it keeps moving. Tommy and Annika climbed down from the table and stepped across the floor very carefully so they wouldn't get wet. Out of doors, the sun shone in a clear blue sky. It was one of those radiant September days that make you feel like walking in the woods. Pippi had an idea. Let's take Mr. Nelson to go on a little picnic. Oh, yes, let's, cried Tommy and Annika. Run home and ask your mother then, said Pippi, and I'll be getting the picnic basket ready. Tommy and Annika thought that was a good suggestion. They rushed home and were back again almost immediately. But Pippi was already waiting by the gate with Mr. Nelson on her shoulder, a walking stick in one hand and a big basket in the other. The children walked along the road a little ways and then turned into a pasture where a pleasant path wound in and out among the thickets of birch and hazel. Presently, they came to a gate on the other side of which was an even more beautiful pasture. But right in front of the gate stood a cow who looked as if nothing would persuade her to move. Annika yelled at her, and Tommy gravely went up and tried to push her away, but she just stood there staring at the children with her big cow eyes. To put an end to the matter, Pippi set down her basket and lifted the cow out of the way. The cow, looking very silly, lumbered off into the hazel bushes. How can cows be so bullheaded, said Pippi, and jumped over the gate. Oh, what a lovely, lovely wood, cried Annika in delight, as she climbed up on all the stones she could see. Tommy had brought along a dagger Pippi had given him, and with it he cut walking sticks for Annika and for himself. He cut his thumb a little too, but that didn't matter. Maybe we ought to pick some mushrooms, said Pippi, and she broke off a pretty rosy one. I wonder if it's possible to eat it, she continued. At any rate, it isn't possible to drink it, that much I know, so there's no choice except to eat it. Maybe it's possible. She took a big bite and swallowed it. It was possible, she announced, delighted. Yes, sirree. We'll certainly stew the rest of this sometime. And she threw it high over the treetops. What have you got in your basket? Asked Annika. Is it something good? I wouldn't tell you for $1,000, said Pippi. First, we must find a good picnic spot. The children eagerly began to look for such a place. Annika found a large flat stone that she thought was satisfactory, but it was covered with red ants. I don't want to sit with them, said Pippi, because I'm not acquainted with them. And besides, they bite, said Tommy. Do they? Said Pippy. Well, you bite them right back, Tommy. Then Tommy found a little clearing among the hazel bushes, and he thought that would be a good place. Oh, no, that's not sunny enough for my freckles, said Pippy, and I do think freckles are so attractive. Further on, they came to a hill that was easy to climb. On one side of the hill, there was a nice sunny rock, just like a little balcony, and there they sat down. Now, shut your eyes wide, set the table, said Pippy. Tommy and Annika squeezed their eyes as tightly shut as possible. They heard Pippy opening the basket and rattling paper. 1, 2, 19. Now you may look, said Pippy at last. They looked, and they squealed with delight when they saw all the good things Pippy had spread on the bare rock. There were good sandwiches with meatballs and ham, a whole pile of sugared pancakes, several little brown sausages, and 3 pineapple puddings. For you see, Pippy had learned cooking from the cook on her father's ship. Oh, aren't scrubbing vacations grand, said Tommy, with his mouth full of pancakes. We ought to have them every day. Oh, no, indeed. I'm not that anxious to scrub, said Pippy. It's fun to be sure, but not every day. That would be too tiresome. At last the children were so full they could hardly move, and they sat still in the sunshine and just enjoyed it. I wonder if it's hard to fly, said Pippy, and looked dreamily over the edge of the rock. The rock sloped down very steeply below them, and it was a long way to the ground. Down, at least one ought to be able to fly. It must be harder to fly up, but you could begin with the easiest way. I do think I'll try. No, Pippy, cried both Tommy and Annika. Oh, dear Pippy, don't do that. But Pippy was already standing at the edge of the rock. Fly, you foolish fly, fly, and the foolish fly flew, Pippy said, and just as she said flew, she lifted her arms, took off into the air. In half a second, it was a thud. It was Pippy hitting the ground. Tommy and Annika lay on their stomachs and looked down at her, terrified. Pippy got up and brushed off her knees. I forgot to flap, she said joyfully, and I guess I had too many pancakes in my stomach. At that moment, the children noticed that Mr. Nelson had disappeared. He had evidently gone off in a little expedition of his own. They remembered that they had last seen him contentedly chewing the picnic basket to pieces. But during Pippy's flying experiment, they had forgotten him, and now he was gone. Pippy was so angry, she threw her shoe into a deep pool of water. You should never take monkeys with you anywhere, she said. He should have been left at home to pick fleas off the horse. That would have served him right. She continued just getting so angry as she waded out into the pool to get her shoe. The water reached up to her waist. I might as well take advantage of this and wash my hair, said Pippy, and she ducked her head under the water and kept it there so long the water began to bubble. There now, I've saved a visit to the hairdresser, she said. When at last she came up for air, she stepped out of the pool and put on her shoe, and then she went off to hunt for Mr. Nelson. How it squishes when I walk, laughed Pippy. It says "Coroff, coroff" in my dress and "squish, squish" in my shoes. Isn't that jolly? I think you ought to try it too, she said to Annika, who was walking along beside her with her lovely flaxen hair, pink dress, and little white kid shoes. Some other time, Pippy, said the sensible Annika, and they walked on. Mr. Nelson certainly can be exasperating, said Pippy. He's always doing things like this. Once in Arabia, he ran away from me and took a position as a maidservant to an elderly widow. That was a lie, of course, she added after a pause. Tommy suggested they all three go in different directions and hunt. At first, Annika didn't want to because she was a little afraid. But Tommy said, you aren't a fraidy cat, are you? And of course, Annika couldn't tolerate such an insult, so off they all went. Tommy went through a field. Mr. Nelson he did not find, but he did find something else. A bull, or to be more exact, the bull found Tommy. And the bull did not like Tommy, for he was a very cross bull who was not at all fond of children. With his head down, he charged towards Tommy, bellowing fearfully. Tommy let out a terrified shriek that could be heard all through the woods. Pippy and Annika heard it and came running to see what was the matter. By that time, the bull had almost reached Tommy, who had fallen head over heels over a stump. What a stupid bull, said Pippy to Annika, who was crying uncontrollably. He ought to know he can't act like that. He'll get Tommy's white sailor suit all dirty. I'll have to go and talk some sense into that stupid animal. And off she started. She ran up and pulled the bull by the tail. Forgive me for breaking up the party, she said. Since she had given his tail a good hard pull, the bull turned around and saw a new child to catch on his horns. As I was saying, went on Pippy, forgive me for breaking up, and also forgive me for breaking off. And with that, she broke off one of the bull's horns. It isn't the style to have two horns this year, and the better bulls have just one horn, if any. And then she broke off the other horn too. As bulls have no feelings in their horns, this one didn't know what she had done. He charged at Pippy, and if she had been any other child, there would have been nothing left but a grease spot. Hey, hey, stop tickling me, shrieked Pippy. You can't imagine how ticklish I am. Hey, stop it. Stop or I'll die laughing. But the bull didn't stop, and at last Pippy jumped up on his back to get a little rest. To be sure, she didn't get much, because the bull didn't in the least approve of having Pippy on his back. He dodged about madly to get her off, but she clamped her knees and hung on. The bull dashed up and down the field, bellowing so hard that smoke came out of its nostrils. Pippy laughed and shrieked and waved at Tommy and Annika, who stood a little distance away, trembling like aspen leaves. The bull whirled around and around, trying to throw Pippy. See me dancing with my little friend, cried Pippy, and she kept her seat. At last the bull was so tired that he lay down on the ground and wished he had never seen such a thing as a child. He had never thought much of children anyway. Are you going to take a little nap now? Asked Pippy politely. Then I won't disturb you. She got off his back and went over to Tommy and Annika. Tommy had cried a little. He had a cut on one arm, but Annika had bandaged it with her handkerchief, so it didn't hurt anymore. Oh, Pippy, cried Annika excitedly. Shh, shh, whispered Pippy. Don't wake the bull. He's sleeping. If we wake him, he'll be fussy. But the next minute, without paying any attention to the bull in his nap, she was shrieking at the top of her voice, Mr. Nelson! Mr. Nelson! Where are you? We've got to go home. And believe it or not, there sat Mr. Nelson up in a pine tree, sucking on his tail, looking very lonely. It wasn't much fun for a little monkey to be left all alone in the woods. He skipped down from the pine tree and up on Pippy's shoulder, waving his little straw hat as he always did when he was very happy. Well, so you aren't going to be a maidservant this time, said Pippy, stroking his back. Oh, that was a lie. That's true, she continued. But still, if it's true, how can it be a lie? You wait and see. It's going to turn out he was a maidservant in Arabia after all. And if that's the case, I know who's going to be making the meatballs at our house from now on. And then they strolled home, Pippy's dress still going co-off, and her shoes squish, squish. Tommy and Annika thought that they had a wonderful day in spite of the bull, and they sang the song they had learned at school. It was really a summer song, but they thought it fit very nicely. Even now, it was almost autumn. In the jolly summertime, through field and wood we make our way. Nobody's sad, everybody's gay. We sing as we go. Holo, holo. You who are young, come join our song. Don't sit at home moping all day long. Our song will swell through wood and dale and up the mountain top as well. In the jolly summertime, we sing as we go. Holo, holo. Pippy sang too, but with slightly different words. In the jolly summertime, through field and wood, I make my way. I do exactly as I wish, and when I walk, it goes squish, 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 squish. And my old shoe, it's really true, sometimes says chip and sometimes chew. For the shoe is wet, the bull sleeps yet, and I eat all the rice pudding I can get in the jolly summertime. I squish wherever I go, squish-o, squish-o, squish-o. And that is the end of chapter 6. Next time we're going to read Pippy Goes to the Circus. And I wanted to tell you that Nils and I have worked out a new way to read books. So we're going to try it. And if it doesn't work, I have a backup book. But this is something my daughter, who's been a teacher for 27 years, she does with her class. So we're going to try it out. You can be patient. Niels has got a second computer screen, and it's going to be sheep and a Jeep. And the reason I love this story, you guys, is because we have a Jeep. Let me see. We had a Jeep. Here it is. And my Dick is driving, and we have our two daughters and their friend in it. And this is the same kind of Jeep. There you go. That's in the story. Okay. So this book means a lot to our family. Let's see if we can share it. It's the magic of technology. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Beep, beep. Sheep in a Jeep on a hill that's steep. Uh-oh. Oh, the Jeep won't go. Sheep leap to push the Jeep. Sheep shove. Sheep grunt. Sheep don't think to look up front. Jeep goes splash. Jeep goes thud. Jeep goes deep in gooey mud. The sheep tug. Sheep shrug. Nothing's happening. It's stuck. Sheep yelp. Sheep get help. Jeep comes out. Sheep shout. Ta-da! They're dancing around so happy. They can keep going on their trip. Sheep cheer. Oh dear, the driver's sheep forgets to steer. They're celebrating too much. Who's holding the wheel? Ah, Jeep in a heap. Jeep weep. What has happened to our Jeep? It's all crushed. Gee, sheep sweep the heap. Looks like they're getting it back together again. Jeep for sale. Cheap. Uh-oh. They didn't quite get it back together again. They couldn't drive it. So it looks like they're selling the parts very cheap. And it says here you can make your own very soft and fluffy sheep. Whoa, okay. My book doesn't have that part on it. So that's something maybe Art Lab could do, which would come in handy for Christmas with little sheep all around. Hey, I like that. So yay, that's our newest experiment, you guys. And this way you could read along with us.
Yeah.
I love that book.
Yeah, wasn't that fun? I'm glad you do. And I especially love it because we were able to write in one.
Bobbi, we still have some time. Would you like to read your read the other book?
Oh yeah, I would. This is one of my favorites called Zen Shorts. It's about a panda. Okay.
Book.
It is one of my very favorite. And here's the panda. And he's probably doing some Tai Chi or some yoga, balancing right there. Okay, here we go. Michael, there's a bear outside, said Coral. A what? Said Michael. Okay, there's Coral. He's inside his room and he's trying to get his brother's attention because he notices there's a bear when he looked out the window. A bear, he's really big and he's in the backyard. What's he doing, said Michael. He's sitting, said Carl. He has an umbrella. An umbrella, says his brother, and he's peeking through the door. Okay. Carl can't take his eyes off the window because you don't usually see a bear in your backyard. By the time the boys got outside, their sister Addie was already talking with the bear. I'm sorry for arriving unannounced, said the bear. The wind carried my umbrella all the way from my backyard to your backyard. I thought I would retrieve it before it became a nuisance. And he spoke with a slight panda accent. That is a big umbrella. No wonder it was able to lift him up. But then he is a very big bear, too. Michael introduced himself, and then Addie introduced Carl because Carl was shy around bears. He didn't know. And this is how Addie, Michael, and Carl met Stillwater. Okay, that's the bear's name, Stillwater. And if you've ever been close to a pond or lake and the wind is not blowing and the water looks like a mirror, it's called Stillwater, and that's his bear's name. The next day, Addie went to have tea with Stillwater, and she's going up a very high hill, and that's Stillwater's house. Hello, Addie said as she stepped inside. Come in, a faraway voice called. And then she heard the voice say, oh yes, come out, come out. Stillwater was in the backyard. And there's Addie. So she has a plant. Okay. Stillwater. So let's see where he is. Oh, he was in a tent. This is a birthday present from my Uncle Ray, Stillwater said. He always gives presents on his birthday to celebrate the day he was born. I like it so much that I'm not staying in my house right now. Stillwater invited Addie to sit with him. What a beautiful yellow tent. Okay. You brought me some cake, said Stillwater. That was very nice of you. Is it your birthday? No, said Addie. It's not mine either, said Stillwater, but let me give you a gift for my uncle's birthday. I will tell you a story. So I thought this was a plant, you guys, but it's a piece of bamboo stuck in a cake. So Addie knows that pandas love bamboo plants. So she made a cake and put a little branch right in the middle. So for the present, Stillwater is going to give Addie a story. And here's the story. My Uncle Ry lived alone at a very small house up in the hills. He didn't own many things. He lived a very simple life. One evening, he discovered he had a visitor. A robber had broken into the house and was rummaging through my uncle's few belongings. The robber didn't notice Uncle Ry, and when my uncle said, hello, the robber was so startled, he almost fell down. My uncle smiled as the robber, and he shook the robber's hand. Welcome, welcome, how nice of you to visit. The robber opened his mouth to speak, but he couldn't think of anything to say. Ry never lets anyone leave his house empty-handed, so he looked around the tiny hut for a gift for the robber, but there was nothing to give. The robber began to back towards the door. He wanted to leave. At last, Uncle Ry knew what to do. He took off the robe he was wearing, which was very old and tattered. Here, he said, please take this. Wow. That doesn't happen very often, does it?
No.
The robber thought my uncle was crazy. He took the robe and dashed out of the door and escaped through the night. My uncle sat and looked at the moon, its silvery light spilling over the mountains, making all things quietly beautiful. Poor man, lamented my uncle. All I had to give him was my tattered robe. If only I could have given him this wonderful moon. Wow. Isn't that a great thought that we can give presents like the moon or the stars to others? Your uncle sounds nice, said Addie. I don't think I would have given away my only robe. I know how that is, said Stillwater, but there is always the moon. And they're doing ink paintings, I should say. That was a good story, said Addie. Thank you, said Stillwater. And this is a good cake. Thanks, said Addie. I made it myself. And there's Stillwater, and he's licking the bamboo. And he's got some cake on his plate. And there's Addie. Oh, so I'll close there. I've got my little flip phone. I can check the time. It's almost 11 o'clock, and I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. If that we could, I wanted to ask you if you ever